The core promise of blockchain has always been this beautiful, simple idea. Anyone, anywhere can verify things without trusting some central authority. But what if I told you there's a silent threat, an existential crisis, really, that could unravel that entire dream of decentralization? It's a massive deal, so let's get right into it.
And look, the stakes really couldn't be higher. There's this phenomenon called stake explosion, and it's threatening to turn this incredible, revolutionary tech right back into the very thing it was supposed to kill, a centralized system run by just a handful of players. I mean, talk about a huge step backward.
So let's call state explosion what it is. It's like a silent killer for the blockchain, a kind of digital disease. It's the slow, creeping debt that just builds and builds over time, and all the while, it's silently eating away at the network's health and its decentralization.
Okay, so what is this state we're talking about? The best way to think about it, honestly, is like the blockchain's short-term memory. It's basically its RAM. It's everything that's happening right now. Every account balance, every smart contract, all the data you need in an instant to process the very next transaction.
But here's the crucial part, the thing you have to understand. Not all data growth is the same. The issue isn't just that the blockchain is getting bigger, of course it is. The real problem is the type of data that's growing out of control. And this brings us to the most important distinction we're going to make today, the difference between the blockchain's memory and its archive.
All right, so to really get to the bottom of this, we need to pull apart the two kinds of data a blockchain has to deal with. Let's explain the difference between history and state.
Okay, so check this out. On the one hand, you've got history. Think of this as the blockchain's giant library archive. It's the full record of everything that's ever happened. It's massive, sure, but you just add new books to the end. You can store it on a cheap, slow hard drive. No big deal. But then you have state. This isn't the library, it's the librarian's active desk. For every single new transaction, you have to randomly jump around and pull different bits of info. That requires insanely fast random access. We're talking expensive, high-speed SSDs and RAM. And that, right there, is the core of the problem.
In this chart, man, it really drives the point home. This is the hardware wall we're slamming into. Look at this. Your old-school spinning hard drive, it can maybe do what? A couple hundred operations a second? But a modern blockchain needs to be doing tens of thousands. The raw physics of a spinning metal disk just literally cannot keep up. It is exactly like trying to compete in a Formula One race with a horse and buggy. It's just not going to happen.
So what does this all mean for you, for me, for the average person? Well, here's the scary part. As the state gets bigger and bigger, the hardware you need to run a node gets crazier and crazier and more expensive. Pretty soon, the regular person running a node from their home on a laptop, they're completely priced out. And who's left? Only the big players, the massive companies, the cloud providers, the very centralized giants we were trying to get away from. That is the pressure of centralization in real time.
And hey, if you think this is all just some abstract, theoretical problem, think again. Because this exact vulnerability wasn't just a theory. It was used as a weapon to bring an entire network to its knees.
Let's go back to 2016. The Shanghai attacks on Ethereum. An attacker figured out a clever and really cheap way to spam the network. They sent out these simple transactions that forced every single node to do a ton of random disk reads. That exact weak spot we've been talking about. And the network just choked. It couldn't handle the load. Block times went through the roof. The whole thing ground to a halt. It actually took two separate emergency hard forks to patch the hole and then clean up the absolute mess it left behind.
And what a mess it was. Get this, the attacker created 19 million empty accounts. Just junk. Accounts that did absolutely nothing, except add permanent bloat to the Ethereum state. It was like a permanent scar. Every single transaction from that day forward became just a little bit slower. A little bit more work for every node operator, forever.
Okay, so that's the crisis. And yeah, it's a big one. But here's the good news. This isn't some unsolvable problem. The brightest minds in this space are all over it. The conversation has totally shifted from just talking about the disease to actually developing the cure. So let's look at how we solve this storage crisis.
When you boil it all down, there are really two main paths forward, two different philosophies on how to find a cure. On one side, you have the economic solutions. The idea here is simple. You use it, you pay for it. It's kind of like paying rent for the space you take up. On the other side, you have the technical solutions. This is more like a medical breakthrough, using super advanced cryptography to change how the system works at a fundamental level. So let's talk about that first option, state rent. You can actually see this in action today.
On a chain like Solana, for example, it's kind of like a security deposit on an apartment. You have to lock up a minimum balance to cover your storage costs, and if you ever close your account, you get that deposit back. Then you have Nervos, which is super interesting. Their native token, CKB, literally is a right to 1 byte of storage. Now, Ethereum looked at this idea, but for a massive, established network with tons of existing contracts, it was just way too complex and way too risky to change the rules mid-game.
And that's why Ethereum is making this huge bet on a technical cure, something called Verkle trees. See, the whole problem with trying to verify blocks without having the entire state on hand is that the proofs you need to send around are gigantic. They just clog up the whole network. What Verkle trees do, using some seriously mind-bending math, is compress those proofs. We're not talking a little bit. We're talking 20 to 30 times smaller. It's a total game changer, making this idea of stateless verification actually possible. And that right there is the ultimate goal, the dream, statelessness. Just imagine a future where you can help secure the network, you can validate blocks, without needing a monster computer with a crazy expensive SSD to hold the entire state. It completely shatters the link between participating and having to pay for expensive hardware. It reopens the door for the everyday person to run a node again.
So what we're seeing is a genuine race for decentralization. Different projects are placing different bets, taking totally different paths to try and solve this exact same existential problem.
At the end of the day, it really boils down to 3 core philosophies. First, you have the constraint approach. That's Bitcoin. The philosophy is keep the state incredibly simple and small from the very beginning to maximize decentralization. Then you have the rent approach, used by Solana and Nervos, which uses economic forces to make people pay for the space they use. And finally, you have the cryptography bet. That's Ethereum, banking on future technology to completely decouple verification from state storage.
So this really leaves us with the biggest question of all. How we solve this problem of state explosion isn't just a technical detail, it will define the very future of this technology. So, will blockchains remain a tool for the many, an open platform for anyone to use and verify, or will they slowly become just another service, run by the few? The race to decide that is happening right now.